and welcome to Paris Mountain State Park in Greenville, South Carolina. I'm Ranger Kathy Taylor. Welcome also to part 2 of our Aquatic Ecology on-site program for 5th graders. In part 1, we walked to Mountain Creek and we got into the creek and collected animals that lived there, macroinvertebrates, that help us determine the water quality. In part 2, we're going to describe the water and then measure the abiotic factors of temperature and pH. And then we'll finish in part 3 in the park lab, assessing the water quality. So let's get started with part 2. Wow, we ended up with a lot of animals in here. We'll take them up to the lab and see what they are, assess the water quality, then I'll get them back to the creek. Now that we are out of the creek, we'll get our field sheet out and we'll describe the water and then measure our abiotic factors. We will need our field sheet to measure the abiotic factors. We will do the biotic part of the sheet back at the park lab. Where it says stream name, write Mountain Creek. Not a very creative name, but that was the name on the earliest maps from the 1700s. We need to describe the water. Think of how you describe it to someone who can't see it. Is it moving or non-moving? Write down what you observe it to be, moving or non-moving. And you can add other words if you wish. How would you describe the color of the water? Students often say the water looks brown. But if I collect some water in a clear container, let's see what color it is. Well, what color is it? Did you know there's such a thing as colorless? We have colorless water at Paris Mountain, clear and colorless. I've been around some creeks that had darker water or cloudy water, but at Paris Mountain State Park, the water is colorless and clear. Okay, is the bottom of the creek rocky or smooth? I know with a little bit of sun and shade, it's a little hard to see the rocks, but can you see rocks down there? We're actually in a riffle zone in the creek, which is another way of saying a rocky zone. And scientists know that usually there are animals under the rocks as their shelter for the animals that live here, that call this place home. So it's safe to write rocky. If you walked barefoot in the water, you would certainly feel the rocks. Is it shaded or sunny? We have a bit of sun and also shade, don't we? Thanks to the tall trees that stand above us, Mountain Creek stays fairly shaded a good bit of the time. And that does make a difference in terms of the habitat it provides to the animals that live here. To measure our abiotic factors of temperature and pH, we're going to need some water. And so I'm going to put water from the creek in 3 buckets, so we'll be able to do 3 measurements of temperature and 3 of pH. I'll try to have the water in the buckets about the same in each. Scientists like to be consistent that way. Well, we have our 3 buckets of creek water and we have our field sheet. So what else do we need to measure the temperature today? We need thermometers. I have these blue thermometers here. I'm going to make sure to hold them at the round top. Why am I holding them a certain way? Well, I want to make sure I don't measure my hand temperature, right? So I'm holding them so I don't get my hand temperature involved in measuring the water temperature. Now, before we put our thermometers in the buckets of creek water, let's see what the air temperature is today and take a look at this thermometer too. Let's see if you can see this thermometer. Do you see a 10, 20, 30 on there? Now, if we were measuring in Fahrenheit, that would be pretty cold, wouldn't it? But we're measuring in Celsius because that's what scientists all over the world do. So, is the temperature above or below the 20? I'm going to ask you though, do you predict that the water temperature from Mountain Creek will be cooler or warmer than the air temperature? So I'm going to put a thermometer in each bucket, and ideally we'd have a student holding each thermometer in the bucket. I'm just going to lay them down. The main thing is that we're being consistent, that we're going to have them all the same, and I'm going to set my timer for 2 minutes. So why is that? Well, we know that it's important to give the thermometer time to read the temperature. If someone takes your temperature, depending on the thermometer, it might take a little bit of time to actually tell the temperature. So we have those ready. And let's think a little bit more about temperature and the role it plays here at Paris Mountain State Park or in general. We know that animals and plants, but animals, let's say, can handle a certain range of temperatures. Each animal, each species of animal has a range of temperatures that can handle. So if it gets colder than that range or hotter than that range, the animal might die. So animals depend on a certain range of temperatures. And right here at the park, we know that it gets colder and some animals have to make adjustments. Like at the creek, some of the animals go under the creek to water underneath the creek when it's either dry and warm or if it's too cold in the winter time. So there are adjustments that are made, but that makes a difference to animals. And I mean, whatever the temperature is, it makes a difference. Well, it's been 2 minutes. So let's have our field sheets handy. And there's a place for 3 temperatures on your sheet, and that's where you'll be writing down the temperature that we get. So I'm going to take 1 thermometer out of a bucket. So looking at this, we want to see where the red line goes up to. We know that heat causes objects to expand and cold causes objects to contract. So when that red liquid inside the thermometer heats up, it expands or rises. When it gets colder, as in when we put it in the water, if it's colder, it will contract or go down. That red line will go down. Do you see the 10, the 20, the 30 on there? Where does the red line go up to? Is it above the 20? Is it above the 10? Is it halfway between the 10 and the 20? And what number would that be? Write down on your field sheet the temperature you just got here on the first space allotted for temperature. What do we got here? Let's get where we can see it. What number does it go up to? Now we know that these thermometers all agreed with each other before we started this, and we know the buckets of creek water were all collected at the same time, right, in the same spot, so that we should get the same reading with all 3, but do we? So write down whatever you get for the number here on your field sheet for the second spot. Now we'll look at the third one. Get this where we can see it. There it is. All right. What number do you get for the third thermometer? And write that down on your field sheet in the third spot. If you have your 3 temperature readings written down, add them together and write the total where it says equals. Write down the total for the 3 temperatures. Then you'll divide by 3 to get the average temperature. Or you might know a little secret that if the numbers are the same for each temperature, that will be the average temperature. Like, it wasn't 20, but say if it was 20 for each temperature, you added together 20 plus 20 plus 20 equals 60, divided by 3 equals 20. So you get the idea. So did the temperature go up or down for the water compared to the air? It went down. And that was kind of what we were expecting, knowing that we had a cool night last night, and it would have been surprising if the water temperature had gotten higher than the air temperature today. So that, in terms of water quality, is a good sign that the water temperature is reasonable given what the air temperature has been doing. We don't suspect that chemicals or pollution are heating up the water unnaturally. Next, we're going to measure the pH of the creek water. So we have our 3 buckets and 3 pH strips. Now let's think about what pH is and what a pH chart looks like. We're going to be using a chart that goes from 4.5 to 10 on a pH scale. We know that pH scales can go 0 to 14, but the really low numbers, really acidic numbers like vinegar or soft drinks, are lower than we would find in a creek. And a really high alkaline number like that of bleach, that would not be needed for our scale for the creek. So we'll do the 4.5 to 10. I have the 3 pH strips. I'm going to put them in the bucket of creek water just for about 5 seconds, long enough to saturate them. So that the 3 colors on the pH strip can react to the water. Okay. Now we'll use our chart to determine what they tell us. And have your field sheet handy for that. Place the pH chart next to the 3 strips that we dunked into Mountain Creek water. And now we just do color matching, comparing the color on the strips to the color on the chart. And the numbers should tell us what pH we have. So, trying to determine, I like to look at the green first, and then at the other colors. But which number are you seeing is to be closest to? If we get really low down, we don't even have green. So, what are you thinking it would be? Whatever you see, you can write that down on your field sheet. And if all these strips are the same, you can write that number for each. They do look about the same to me, which they should be. They were made at the same time, in the same batch. So, well, I'm going to go ahead and mention it. I was thinking it was between 6.5 and 7. I'm actually starting to lean toward 7, I think. What do you think? 6.5 or 7, whichever you decide. Write that 3 times, and then you can add those together. Like if you got 7, what would you get? 21 divided by 3, what will you get? Oh, we get 7. So is 7 a good pH number to get in terms of water quality? Yes, right at neutral. That is great to get 7 pH. Next, we'll head up to the park lab where we'll look at our temperature and pH results and the animals we found in the creek, and we'll determine the water quality at Paris Mountain State Park. Let's go inside the lab next.